Women Who Own It podcast spotlights women business owners who are pioneers in their field, setting trends, blazing trails, and creating game-changing innovations. Brought to you by WBENC, the largest certifier of women-owned businesses in the U.S. and a leading advocate for women business owners and entrepreneurs. And me, Allison Maslin. I've been a business owner for the last 35 years. I'm the Wall Street Journal best-selling author of the book, Scale or Fail. So join our bold community of women who built it, grew it, and own it. I'll see you on the show. Welcome to Women Who Own It. I am your host, Allison Maslin. I'm the founder of Pinnacle Global Network. And this podcast is for women business leaders by women business leaders and in partnership and brought to you by WBENC, who is the largest certifier of women-owned businesses in the country. And we highlight the most amazing business women on here that are making things happen. And you can learn from their wisdom and their insight to make the road easier. So today I'm super excited because we have a superstar entrepreneur with us today. Joyce Zhu is the founder and CEO of Numa Foods. She previously worked in management consulting before becoming an entrepreneur to help others tackle their sweet cravings in a healthier manner. And that would be me having the sweet cravings. And she's also sharing a piece of her heritage in her brand. She graduated from the University of Chicago with a BA in economics. And Joyce, welcome to Women Who Own It.
Thank you so much, Allison. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, your story is inspiring. Your products are amazing. Can you just share? Also, I know you work with your mom.
Yes.
Oh,
I'm
awesome.
sure we'll get to that. I get a lot of questions on that all the time.
Yeah, well, I have a daughter too, and I, would love working with her, although she doesn't really want to work with me. We love each other. So I think that's fantastic. So what inspired you to launch your company, Numa?
Yeah, I think it stemmed from a personal issue, and the fact that food has always been something that has helped me connect with my family and others and heritage. I think it's a really big part of a lot of cultures, but in Asian cultures, it's really, really huge. And so when I was back in management consulting, I traveled a ton for work. And so I also have an autoimmune disease for which I have to eat really clean, really whole foods and limit sugars. I was struggling to find a healthy alternative to really satisfy my sweet tooth on the road. And so brought up to my mom, and she whipped up these healthier, all natural versions of her favorite childhood candy back in Asia. So they're sort of like these Asian creamy nougats. And they were the perfect solution, lower in sugar, higher in protein, packed with a ton of vitamins, surprisingly. And they were not only hit with me, but also with my friends and colleagues that I started to take it to work and share it around. And that was sort of the genesis of the idea. And I think the story behind it and that was imbued in this little piece of candy really resonated with me and others. And I knew I had to share it with the world.
Wow. It's so perfect because here you had a challenge and you created something to solve that challenge. And then you think, well, probably others feel the same way because so many people struggle with the sugar thing.
Absolutely.
But still want to satisfy that craving, but in a healthier way. So it's so brilliant. Now you were in the consulting world. What was it like making that jump from a career in management consulting to running a business in the food industry, which is, quite an industry to step into?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it was quite daunting. I didn't have any experience in the food industry prior to entering with Numa. Honestly, I was very blinded by my passion, and I think that helped me and hurt me in some ways, but mostly helped me. I'd say I think it gave me what they call like founders founders ignorance, basically. because you don't know what you don't know. But
Yeah.
because you're so passionate about the idea, like I was, you're gonna wake up and you're gonna go out and seek those answers. And I think at the end of the day, that's what really makes an entrepreneur who's going to get far. Just waking up and putting one foot in front of the other, and just finding solutions, not being afraid to fail.
Yeah, that is huge. I mean, sometimes if we knew what's ahead, it's probably good that we don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. I said that to my mom, and she tells me too, because she's in a different stage of her life, right? And so jumping into a business with me when I was coming in all gun ho with my energy and like this idea of wanting to change the world and all this stuff, and she's starting to more settle down, like she's in that later stage. And so when she thinks back of the things that she had to go through with me in the early stages of Numa, she said, if I knew this, I definitely would not have promised you to do this with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Well, something you just said was about putting one foot in front of the other. How do you do that sometimes when things are tough? And we've got business owners that are listening to this that have those days where you just feel like, this is hard. What do you do?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think community is so important, and you have to take the time and effort to really build one for yourself, and you'll be surprised at how welcoming most local communities are. It doesn't matter where you are nowadays, especially in the food and beverage space, which is wonderful about the space. Like new food and beverage companies are popping up in the middle of nowhere. Like you can find a real community wherever you are. And with the internet nowadays, especially since COVID times, and all the connections becoming more digital, it's even easier to do that. So I'd really encourage just like getting out there with your story, with your passion. When you're truly excited about something, it'll come off, and it'll draw people in, and you can really create a support network that way.
Yeah, I love that. And we're going to talk about WBENC in a little bit here, but that's obviously a huge support network.
Yes.
That, we're both part of. So you've had a successful Kickstarter. You've expanded your facility. What were some of the challenges you faced, Joyce, in starting your company?
Oh boy. We've run into so many roadblocks, especially being first time manufacturers. So we set up our own space, and I think our biggest challenges have been in doing that. Neither my mom and I, nor my dad, who's also been a huge helping hand in this, true family-owned business, have any experience setting up a real manufacturing facility. So I'll give you an example, Allison. When we first started out in 2018 with our first facility, we rented this very small, like 800 square foot space. Super excited to get up and running. And my mom has experience with import and export since she immigrated here with my dad from Shanghai. So they're very aware, very aware of the local cultures. And one of our ingredients, our main sweetener, is only able to be sourced from Asia, at least to what we know, because we have a very specific strain that we need. It's made with a specific process from grains, which is very popular out there. And so when we were importing our first batch of sweeteners, we were totally inexperienced. And so we had no idea what to request for. So we just said, we want this, that it seems right, and like it's about this color. And we shipped over this massive order quantity at the time, which was 4 pallets for us. And it was totally unusable because it didn't boil to the right temperature that we needed. So basically it wouldn't form a candy that could create the right shape. And so it was very dark for us, because we spent a lot of our cash to fund that first initial purchase order for the sugar, which is a major ingredient for our candies. And we were sitting there, I remember distinctly, my mom was sitting there in that room, which was very empty at the time because we just moved in, and it was just this, cement floor, closed off walls, no windows. And it was just feeling very down and dark, sitting there. And then we ended up spending weeks and weeks and weeks just boiling, like being on the phone with our Chinese supplier, being there late at night, early mornings for him, and just testing until we figured out a way to finally find a local syrup, mix it together, and get it to the right temperature. But it was a long endeavor. We had to eat higher costs for it, but definitely huge lesson learned.
Yeah, we definitely learn a lot from those experiences. And I think that we all have to go through them. But I can just imagine you sitting there in that warehouse and that when you first realize it going, oh my God, plus the amount of time waiting for the shipment
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
right? And
that's
so,
right.
oh my goodness. So I have to ask you, especially in the food business, anything where you're out there in retail, a big part of your growth is distribution, retail, direct to consumer. What has been your strategy there? Has that been challenging? Was that challenging for you to figure out the distribution piece in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think it took us some time to really figure out what was the right distribution strategy for us, because, coming in, I really went in on the community of pre-COVID times. I tried to attend all of the food and beverage events I could and talk to a bunch of entrepreneurs. And of course, doing so is super great because you create a community, but you also get a lot of information. And
Right.
everyone's path is different. And I think in my early days, because I was an eager beaver, I want to do everything. So I want to take everyone's advice. And, that person was doing super well D2C on their website, and I wanted to do that and do Facebook ads. And then that, this person was doing super well in local retail stores, specialty stores in New York. So I wanted to do that too. But when you try to do everything, you end up not doing anything well. And so I think it took us some time to figure that out. But since COVID hit, it actually helped me rewire how I thought about distribution. It sort of actually forced me to really focus online. And what's happened is we now have really focused our distribution channels on Amazon and D2C. And Amazon is our largest channel to date. And I think it's been a phenomenal partner for us to access a nationwide reach and really get large data in terms of customer feedback, so we can continue to iterate, which has been huge in growing the company.
Yeah, fantastic. And speaking of COVID, so here it, forced you to go more direct to consumer digital. Um, how has COVID affected you in other ways?
Yeah, it's been a huge hit on our supply chain. So like I said, we source a couple of things internationally. The international supply chain right now is a mess, for lack of better terms. It's really gone haywire, and prices have really shot up, and supplies are just dwindling, and it's hard to get access to everything in time. And it's been even more challenging with the fact that we've actually been growing during these times. And so we need to not only maintain the supply we already have, we actually need more, but supplies are being cut. And so we've had to really scramble and to build the supply of backup suppliers, emergency suppliers, getting our hands on whatever we could. There's some days where we had just had to drive, like we have some not as common ingredients, like agar, for example, which is more of an Asian style but vegan version of gelatin. That's sort of hard to find, so we had to drive like 100 miles to access it, like an excess supply. But whatever we got to do, like you do what you have to do, right?
Yeah, and the good thing about that, I think, Joyce, is that it's forced you to diversify,
Yes,
and have backup vendors. So now you
absolutely.
will, because anytime you are depending on one, whether it's a customer or an employee or a vendor, it's a fragile
Yes,
situation. So I think on the
exactly,
other side
Allison.
of this, you're going to be in better shape.
Yes, diversify your suppliers. Important
Yes.
lesson.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh. So now, as you've really been working to, it was one thing to get started, get your manufacturing in place, figure out the direction that you've been going. What have been some lessons that you've learned as you're trying to take your business to the next level?
Yeah, I think, I think since starting business, and I've touched on this a little bit before, but I think focus is really, really important. I think this sort of ties into what I was saying about when we're thinking about distribution, but it's not just distribution. It's how you think about your business too, because as an entrepreneur, like a young company, young entrepreneur, you have to do everything when you're bootstrapping like us and when you don't have experience, but you can't possibly expect yourself to know everything, and you have to give yourself the time and space to learn that, but you need to prioritize. And so I think focusing and prioritizing has been key to not only moving forward, but also like keeping peace of mind and keeping sane, which is important to move forward. And so I think I've gotten a lot better, and I'm still always working on trying to realize, okay, is today or is this week or even this month devoted to manufacturing versus marketing versus sales versus finance, or maybe like a few pieces of both, which are most urgent right now. And I think that prioritization is super key.
Yeah, I love that you shared that, because entrepreneurs can be a little bit ADD, all over the place.
Yeah.
And we're kind of running after the next shiny object. And so I always tell our clients, you can do all the things, but not all right now. Right.
Yes, exactly.
So
yeah,
I think
but
that's
also having a little notebook for any ideas that pop up, because entrepreneurs are creative creatures. So, you want to preserve those ideas because they might really come in handy down the road.
yeah, you don't want to squelch that creativity, for sure.
Yeah.
You may have a whole other candy line in your back pocket there. So you don't want to lose that. What would you say your biggest success secret is, that, allowed you to create the success that you've been seeing today?
I think being very product oriented, in the food and bev space, when it's so highly competitive and people don't lack better options today, how like delicious, healthier options is increasingly, the set is increasingly growing. The options are becoming increasingly overwhelming. I think at the end, you need to have really good product, and one that gets people coming back. And so I think everything the most important thing that we've done, to this day, that we kept doing, because it takes resilience and perseverance to get it right, is to keep listening to customer feedback and really change to it, and actually do something about it. I think that's where I meet a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes, that they struggle with growing. That ends up being something that becomes a pain point on when to listen and when to not. I think you've always got to be listening. You've always got to be pivoting and changing to feedback.
That's such a great idea, great advice, because I think sometimes it's hard to hear,
Yeah.
it's hard to hear people having not, a 5-star reaction, and really listening to what they have to say, especially if you're hearing it, more than once.
More than once, exactly.
Definitely need to look at that. So I think that is great advice. And what about for the people that are listening that are like, I'm really thinking of launching a food-based business? Is there anything that you know now that you wish you would have known then, or that you could direct people in the right direction?
Yeah, I'd say know what you're good at, and know what you're not good at, and try your best to surround yourself, especially in the early days, with people who are good at what you're not good at. Which, if I followed my advice in the early days, I think it would have saved us at least a year or two of pain. Because we are not candy connoisseurs when we started out. You know, my mom and I are candy lovers, but that doesn't make us candy makers. But now we are. But it took it took years of you know, really working on the recipe, calling people, talking to whoever would offer us advice, and throwing out a lot of bad batches to really get here. And that's a lot of time and energy and sweat and tears. So I think if you can bring someone on, or invest some money to bring an expert on to help you in those early days in the areas that you don't know about, you're lacking, that could save you a lot in the long run.
Yeah, that's, you know, why I love what my team and I do in mentoring business owners, because, you know, you don't want to take every piece of advice, but, you know, it definitely can fast track your success and save
For
you
sure.
a lot of headache and heartache, you know, to learn from others' mistakes and experience.
Absolutely.
And one thing I would love to touch on is working with your mom and having a family-owned business. And I'm sure a lot of listeners today are in a family-owned business, whether it's with their spouse or, you know, even siblings. And sometimes that can be challenging, right? Because it's all of our stuff can come up with our family.
Mm-hmm.
What's that been like for you? So I'm here for another scale tip, and we're going through the Scale It method. We have done strategic vision, which is the S in scale, and today I'm going to talk to you about the C in scale, which is all about cash flow. My favorite topic. Cash is the oxygen of your business, so you need that cash to be coming in on a regular basis, and that's generally going to be from marketing, from sales, or some form of finance. And when you're talking about scaling, it's about finding ways to duplicate what you do, and so that you can replicate it over and over and over to multiply your profits and the number of people that you impact in the world. And when you use a scalable strategy and set up your business model so that you can multiply at a greater rate and grow the business beyond you, that's where you really see that big scale happening. So, for instance, creating a membership program, or a subscription program, or a certification program, or franchising, or getting a distributor, anything that is going to multiply your efforts. Because if you're the one that's delivering your product or service, that is not scalable. And when you have that recurring revenue coming in your business, that drives up your cash flow, but it also increases the valuation of your business, often 3 to 10 or more times. So when you're thinking about cash flow, think about how you can increase that cash flow multiplied many times, but with using the same time and effort and investment to do so.
Yeah, it's not gonna lie, it can definitely be challenging. You're absolutely right on that, Allison. But I think it's really important before you dive head in with someone near and dear to you in a business, that you really put that aside, and you lay out very clear guidelines on who's who in the business, in relation to business, and who's in charge at the end of the day. Because you're going to get into arguments, you're going to disagree, you're going to make mistakes, and you know, sometimes when people are tired, people emotional, that might be hard to come around. But if you did your groundwork beforehand, you laid all that out, it's easy to get over that. Versus if we hadn't talked about how it's going to set up from the beginning. You know, my parents agreed that it was going to be my business. They were here to help me out on it. And so I think that's helped a lot in terms of a lot of decision making and when we come to heads. But if we were all equal partners, I can't imagine how that might have gone down, whether we would still be trucking on today.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I mean, in any partnership, really, you have to have those discussions, have that all laid out up front.
Yeah.
Because it can break a business apart. I know, work with my husband. My husband and I work together in our business. He had his own business for 30 years, and then we merged a couple years ago, and I had already been running it for 9 years at that point. And it was definitely an adjustment for both of us. It probably took about 6-8 months, and then we kind of got into I was kind of used to running, like kind of just barreling through.
Right. You had your own way.
Hello.
You had,
I'm over here.
Right.
Exactly. So it definitely is, a work in progress, but it's just so wonderful. And I'm sure it's rewarding for you to be able to build this with your family.
It is. Yeah. And, I think I really seen a new side of them that's really built a lot more respect among the three of us. I think we each have our strengths, and we've brought it's I think without one of us, this business wouldn't be able to stand, because I've come in with sort of like a business and operational expertise. My mom has the ability to connect us to China and import export in terms of like supply chain. She's really good at it. And my dad has a PhD in mechanical engineering. So he's been able to help with the machinery. I mean, without him, we just have chunks of metal in a room. Yeah. So I think all of us together has been really a perfect storm. And so seeing like growing this new dynamic has really connected us. And I think we've also, another point I want to add on working with family, making work, I think, is making sure that you also make time for family time or relationship time versus business time, because people operate differently. And I, for example, when I start talking about my business, I can't stop. I don't have like an off clock, whereas someone like my mom or dad might need to take some space off more. And so we set guidelines. Okay, like here's off time. Like, Joyce, stop talking about Numa now. Like we're not doing that now. And then here's we're doing family time now. Let's talk about anything but. And then okay, now we're back in Numa time. You have free reign. Go ahead. Let's go.
Yeah, you know what? That's so true. I could talk about my business all day long when I start talking to my husband and I see his eyes glazing over.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. I know, just shut up, because he's not going to remember anything I'm talking about right now anyway. So
exactly. Yeah.
That's really great. And to wrap things up here, obviously WBENC is a big part of why you and I are here today. And just curious, for those that are listening and have not become certified yet, or maybe they haven't leveraged their membership yet, how has WBENC certification been a support for your business growth? Yeah,
WBENC is huge, and anyone who's listening who's not certified, highly encourage, go ahead and do that, because it's not only open up a huge community, and I was saying how before, community is super important, but it's also opened up a ton of opportunities. And it was a part of a pitch opportunity. They're hosting this all the time. As part of one like a couple months ago. It's great experience and exposure, because you always want to be practicing your pitch as a small business owner, right? Because you never know who you're going to meet and when you're going to need to just jump into that elevator pitch. And then they have a lot of resources online as well to support it, if you have any questions and whatnot. But also in the food business, being WBENC certified also helps you stand out when you're approaching buyers, and you're trying to gain distribution. And I think that's huge, because like I said, I mean, the landscape is getting increasingly competitive. It's already competitive and just continues to go up. And so if you can differentiate yourself in any way, I'd say do it. I'd say there's only plus side to getting WBENC certified.
Yeah, I fully agree. And that's great advice too. Just, you know, the community on one side, but then also having you set apart, like that you are a vendor that they can really trust. So that's
Right.
fantastic. Listen, thank you so much for being part of Women Who Own It. Is there anything that you would like to have some parting words of advice?
Yeah, I'd say just in general, I think it took us a long time to get here and to really start to, and I think we're really just starting to um, bud as a business. We're just starting to, gain a little traction. It's taken us, a couple of years to get here. And I'd say the early years are a lot of times the toughest. You don't really know if you have market traction. You don't really know if you're onto something. But I'd say be resilient about it. Know that you're going to have to put some time and effort to really grow something big, and be patient. I think that's been one of the biggest things that I've had to cultivate. That's been paying off. I think patience is going to get you a long way, and trust and believe in yourself.
Yeah, that is great, great advice. You got to hang in there. And, you know, the stories of the overnight success, you don't see the years behind it of development. So to get
Right.
there.
Exactly.
And so, well, anyway, Joyce, this has been awesome. And it's been very inspiring to me. I love what you're doing. And everybody check out Zuma and get her products here so we can all cut back on our sugar and have more protein and more vitamins every single day. And for those of you that enjoyed this episode, that like I did, please, we welcome those 5-star reviews. Anything that you want to share this with your colleagues as well. And we will see you the next time on Women Who Own It.